Hi, I'm Hayley Victoria and welcome back to my crime and policing channel. I'm trying out a brand new camera, so it might look a little bit different. If it looks better, then that's awesome, and thank you Google Pixel 6a. So today I'm answering one of the questions that I've been asked on my question and answer post. Please do keep those questions coming in. I'll try and get around to answering them all as soon as possible. Today's question is about what is TWOC? Now then, TWOC is a term you might hear very, very often, especially where I am in the north of England. I mean, if you can't tell by the accent, I am very northern, and there are some spoiler alerts on my wall of fame behind me where you might see whereabouts in Yorkshire I'm actually from. Okay, so like I mentioned, we are looking at TWOC, which is taken without the owner's consent. And in particular, you are taking a conveyance without the owner's consent. What in the Victorian England is a conveyance, I hear you ask? Well, a conveyance is something which has been created to carry a person from one place to another. So thinking like a vehicle. And in general terms, we're looking at cars and things like that. So a conveyance. I'll go into more details about what that is specifically in a minute with legislation. TWOC sits under Section 12 of the Theft Act 1968, and as you know, the Theft Act is a huge piece of legislation which includes lots of little bits, and TWOC is one of those little bits. Okay, so you might have heard TWOC a lot. It is a very, very common offence at the moment, something which we call volume crime, which means there's a high volume of that crime in particular. So we get a lot of TWOCs along with theft, burglaries, domestic violence and all the other stuff you get continuously, and TWOC is quite prolific in some certain areas. Okay, so let's read out the specific wording of what a conveyance actually is. I'm going to use my trusted friend, the Blackstone's Handbook for Policing Students 2020, and this says, a conveyance is any equipment constructed or adapted for the carriage of a person or persons, whether by land, water or air. So a conveyance doesn't include things that are constructed for the carriage of something else. So say you are, I think there's an example in here, a pedestrian controlled trolley used by postal workers to transport mail. That wouldn't count. Pedal cycles aren't covered under this either. That's a separate offence or a separate bit of legislation. So we are looking at a conveyance, which is something created to carry some people, person or persons, from one place to another. In general speak, we're looking at cars basically, and that's what you'll see a lot. Now then, of course, that's the simplified version. There is the wordy legislation bit, which I know some of you like to have for your exams and stuff. So let's read out the legislation. A person commits an offence if, without having the consent of the owner, as we said, you take it without consent, and that consent can't have been taken under duress. So you can't have been pressurising somebody to give you the car, etc. The purpose of this legislation, a person who hires a vehicle is regarded as the owner during the hire period. So say I hire a car and someone else takes that without my consent, in the hire time I got it for, that also counts as well. So a person commits an offence if without having the consent of the owner or lawful authority. So there might be people who are employed to remove vehicles from restricted parking areas, hire purchase agreements where hirer has defaulted, then it gets taken back, and other stuff you'll see. I don't know if you ever watched that, what was it now? Is it Dog the Bounty Hunter or something? They were always recovering cars and stuff on there, but that's in the States and things are slightly different. So it takes any conveyance, so it must be taken for the purpose of being used as a conveyance at the time or in the future. To set adrift a waterborne craft without being in it or on it would not be an offence under this section. But if you climbed into it or onto it later, it would. So there must be a degree of movement in the conveyance, however small and possibly difficult to observe. You can't just sit in it, on it, because taking is not the same thing. Okay, so let's go through the first bit again. A person commits an offence if without having the consent of the owner or other lawful authority, he or she takes any conveyance, so we know what conveyance is, for her or another's use, or knowing that any conveyance has been taken without such authority, drives or allows yourself to be carried in or on it. Ooh. Now then, so under that piece of legislation then, if you TWOC'd a car and I got in it, would I then be guilty of TWOC? Let's apply this legislation. So a person commits an offence if without having the consent of the owner, you've TWOC'd it, or other lawful authority, and you're not allowed to take it. You take a conveyance, you've taken a car, for your use, and knowing that any conveyance has been taken without such authority, we're both in this here, drives, that's you, or allows themselves to be carried in or on it, that's me. So I've got to know that it's been taken without such authority. I've got to know you've TWOC'd it for it then to apply to me as well. So there you go. How interesting is that? So that is what TWOC is. It's taken without the owner's consent. You're looking at a conveyance, which is something that's been created for the carriage of persons from A to B, not for the carriage of stuff. And the example that Blackstone's gave in there was a pedestrian-powered mail trolley. That wouldn't count. That would just be like theft. And pedal cycles or something else as well. So when we looked at the legislation, we broke it down and figured out that you don't have to be the person that drives it. Say if I nicked a car, I'm driving, I'm like, I've just picked up this beautiful Ferrari, TWOC this mate, get in, you hop in, we drive off, you are also guilty of the offence. Sits under section 12 of the Theft Act 1968. Thank you very much for watching, and please keep those questions coming in. In the meantime, stay safe, look after each other, and please don't commit any crimes.